Get in, nerds. We are explaining Hearts of Iron 4. We are taking a look at the ship designer at this point. The ship designer is pretty similar to the air designer, but your variety of chassis is much is larger and I think affects more sort of baseline assumptions here. So you got 5 chassis to play with. It's the submarine hull, the destroyer hull, the cruiser hull, the heavy ship hull, and the carrier hull. So let's get started with the submarine hull, the smallest of the ships, basically. This is the 1936 submarine hull. Like the aircraft, as you get higher level, you're going to unlock new hulls over time. You're going to get access to more slots. Unlike the aircraft, the ship designer uses the specified target hulls at the bottom, whereas the modular ones at the top. So, for example, this is always going to be the engine slot on a ship designer. Well, actually, no. On most ships, the engine's over here, but on a submarine, it's over here. So I'm breaking my own rules here, but my point is, the bottom is where you get the fixed function ones, and the top is where you can put a variety of things. You also have a default torpedoes slot in the bottom left for submarines. And then your modular slots can be used for a bunch of different things. So for example, if you want to use, if you want to do naval mine laying with your submarines, you can put mine laying rails there. You want to give them good radar so that they're better detection, you can do that. Or you can put more torpedo tubes in here. There's also going to be, I don't tend to use snorkels a lot, but you're going to be able to put snorkels up here if you're a snorkeling enthusiast, a snorkelator, a snorkelord. Doop. Oh, also, this little slot here is where you slot in your company that produces these things to get your company bonuses. So, for example, if I use the EBC, that gives me 5% max range, minus 5% surface visibility, and plus 5% fuel usage. That last one's not great, but it is what it is. I'm playing as the United States. I got all the fuel in the world. Next, let's talk about destroyers. So submarines are pretty straightforward. Destroyers have a lot of different functions, and as you can see, we got a lot of different slots down here. I'm going to set these up to, I got a bunch of different designers, so let's see what we've got. For the Brooklyn Naval Yard, we got 5% max speed, 10% sub-detection, 5% each depth charge, attack, and minesweeping. Or on the other hand, if I use Newport News, I can get 5% max speed and 10% max speed, 5% HP. I could also use the Electric Boat Company. That's the same as I use for the submarines. So I think we're going to go with... I don't really need max speed, so it's really HP versus sub-detection, depth charges, and minesweeping. And I'm going to go with depth charges and minesweeping and sub-detection, because I think that's really good for destroyers. So to go across the bottom here, we got our battery slot. This you can use to throw a battery in here. A light battery for destroyers. These are the only types of batteries available for destroyers. You got a light battery or a dual-purpose main battery. The light battery is generally better. It provides additional light attack and piercing at a slight cost of speed and a cost of production. The dual-purpose main battery gives smaller amounts of light attack and light piercing, but it gives higher anti-air, which is better overall. Sorry, I'm comparing the 3 to the 2, so it looks like the difference is bigger than it is. But if I compare the 2 to the 2, you see the dual-purpose main battery is 1.5 light attack, whereas the regular light battery is 1.5, but with higher piercing. And this one provides AA, and has a slightly higher production cost, 130 for the dual purpose versus 120 for the light. So I'm virtually always going to go for dual purpose batteries. I don't think a little bit of piercing matters all that much for destroyers. Next, you got your AA slot. You don't, and by the way, you don't have to fill any of these, although you do need to have at least one weapon on a destroyer. I think you have to fill this slot, but yeah, this slot must have a module installed. There you go. But this one doesn't. You're allowed to not have extra AA if you want. But this provides 3.5 AA. I think in the base game, they also provided a global bonus to AA for all the AA batteries in the ship. This one doesn't in this setup here. Go with our dual-purpose main battery, too. Next, you got 2 slots for electronics. You can use radar or sonar in the second slot. In the first slot, you can do sonar or fire control. This is a destroyer, so sonar is going to be really important for detecting submarines. I'm going to put the upgraded sonar in there. This is the highest level sonar you get access to in the game. This one I'm going to put radar into. I'm just going to put my radar 1, and this is going to get us a very solid overall suite of detection capabilities. 13.9 sub-detection, 25 surface detection. Finally, you've got a torpedo launcher slot. You can put some torpedo tubes in if you want to. Typically, the term that I use for destroyers that are focused on torpedoes is Lancer destroyers. Stay hydrated, kids. Is Lancer destroyers. Those are really good for taking out capital ships in a fleet, and if you're using them for fleet work, for anti-ship work, that's going to be something you're going to want to use a certain amount of. I'm not necessarily designing myself a fleet destroyer right now, but if I were, here's how I would set it up. And I got my 2 custom slots here. I'm still going to do 1 depth charge thrower, and then I'm probably going to do another set of torpedo tubes. So this gets me 57.6 torpedo attack, which is really, really solid. Light attack is still garbage, but it is what it is. We're talking about a destroyer here. On the other hand, and this is going to cost 1380 in terms of overall production. On the other hand, since this is not necessarily going to be a fleet destroyer, I'm going to cut these torpedo tubes here, and I'm going to replace these torpedo tubes with extra depth charges. That's going to reduce my total production cost by a little bit, but it's also going to increase my depth charge attack significantly. These depth charges are what you're going to use to target submarines, and I use a lot of destroyers for what's called ASW, which is anti-submarine warfare work. I use the crab icon to denote ASW destroyers. There's also a drop down here to get the game to to automatically name destroyers. I'm just going to set them to historical destroyers' names. You got a lot of options over here. Historical mine layers, famous leaders, fish, birds, famous battles. This is different for each category, but it's just a flavor thing. It doesn't necessarily do anything for you. Close that out. I didn't save it because I've actually already got an ASW destroyer built, and this is what it looks like. It's exactly the design that I showed you a second ago. Next, we're going to look at cruisers. And cruisers are a kind of a funny animal. This icon means this ship design will be a screen ship. There are 2 ranks of ships in combat, screen ships and capital ships. Screen ships are in front, capital ships are behind. And the reason it matters is because screen ships are there to screen attacks from enemy ships to prevent heavy hits from being taken at capital ships. Destroyers, or any ship with torpedoes, but typically destroyers, have a certain amount of capacity for penetrating screens with torpedo shots. And that's part of what is good about putting a bunch of torpedo tubes on a destroyer, is you have a certain amount of chances of hitting the enemy backline with those torpedoes. So with a cruiser, what type of cruiser it is going to be figured out based on what type of guns it's got. If you go to, I suppose you could put rapid fire guns on it if you wanted, but those are not good. Medium battery is where the cruiser guns are. The light cruiser batteries, as you can see, give light attacking piercing. They also reduce max speed and they provide some hit points. The heavy cruiser batteries provide some surface visibility, which is interesting, but they provide heavy attacking piercing, a larger hit point bonus, but a larger decrease to speed. Also, they cost much more production. If you have any heavy cruiser batteries on your cruiser, that cruiser is now a capital ship, and it will sit in the back rank as opposed to being in the front rank with the other light cruisers and destroyers. So, let's take a look at modules. Again, we've got detection modules down here, AA module here. Over here under secondary, you've got options for a secondary battery. Secondary batteries operate a lot like primary batteries. They're operate a lot like light batteries. They're the same basic setup, but their stats are better overall because they're the secondary batteries of larger ships. So as you can see, if you go with the secondary battery 2 here, you're going to get 4 light attack and 7 light piercing. On the other hand, if you do this dual purpose battery, you're going to get 3 light attack and 4 light piercing, which is lower, but you're also going to get some anti-air out of it, so I'm going to do that. Over here, you've got the armor slot. Destroyers and Submarines do not have an armor slot, but cruisers, heavy ships, and heavy ships is going to be battleships and battle cruisers. Cruisers, heavy ships, and carriers do. Putting armor on the ships significantly increases production cost, obviously, but it also provides armor and hit points at the cost of reduced speed. I'm virtually always going to use armor for my ships. This is going to be a battle line ship, so we're going to go with our battle line shipbuilders at Norfolk Naval Yard. That's going to be 15% armor. It's going to increase production cost by 5, but it's going to increase max speed, light attack, and heavy piercing by 5%, as well as reducing the chance that an incoming torpedo scores a critical hit by 5%. Got a lot of good bonuses there, and I'm going to shell out for them. This is going to be kind of a fleet destroyer, a fleet cruiser, a heavy cruiser. Actually, no, it's not. We're going to use a light cruiser battery. I almost never use heavy cruisers. So we're going to put a fire control suite on here. This is going to increase anti-aircraft by 15%. It's also going to add hit chance 7.5% for all my light and heavy batteries. And then we're going to put some radar on here just for good measure. It's not going to impact the production cost overall. So again, across the top, we've got our multiple purpose slots. So this one can only have a gun, but and this you got your rapid fire guns, your medium batteries, and your anti-air. And then over here, you can put a bunch of different things here. You can have aircraft facilities, secondary batteries, anti-air, all the other gun batteries. You can also do mine warfare stuff, so I can get some mine laying rails. Or I can put some torpedo launchers if I want to have some torpedo attack. Or I can get an aircraft facility that increases my an airplane catapult that lets me launch a little scout plane that increases surface and sub detection significantly. And I'm going to do that because this is going to be a nice, solid, general-purpose light cruiser with a great overall detection suite. Not great at sub detection, but very good surface detection. For these, I'm going to put, and because I put my my light cruiser battery down in the corner there, I can't now put heavy cruiser batteries over here. So that's how that's controlled. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And then over here, I'm just going to put a little bit more anti-air into production. And by the way, all of these cost experience, and unlike the aircraft designer, which only costs a few experience points each of these modules costs 5 experience. So this is going to cost me a barrel full of experience to build. I'm not going to go ahead and save this, but if I would, this would appear in my things I can produce. I've actually already got a reasonably well built up cruiser design here. I'm going to be able to improve it in a little bit, but I haven't done it yet because I haven't built that many cruisers. Next, we're going to look at heavy ships. Heavy ships operate a lot like cruisers, but they are obligatorily capital ships. The armor slot, you've got 2 options, battleship armor and battlecruiser armor. Battleship armor reduces max speed, increases hit points and armor, and reduces incoming torpedo damage and critical chance, as well as increasing production costs. Battlecruiser armor increases production costs by almost the same amount, gives the same 10% bonus to hit points, provides 28 base armor instead of 36, and reduces the incoming torpedo critical chance bonus from the armor compared to battleship armor, but it doesn't reduce the ship's speed, which is very important here, because these heavy ships are basically going to determine how fast the fleet is. Again, across the bottom, you got your default slots. I've actually already designed a battlecruiser, so I'm just going to take you through there. I got fire control here. I got radar here. I got an engine here. I always use the highest upgraded engine that I can get because I like having fast ships. Secondary batteries here. I actually do have an AA gun here, which I don't normally do a lot for battlecruisers, but battlecruiser 2s are a little bit of a crapshoot. I just kind of build them as I build them. Most of these are not going to end up doing a whole lot of work. It's battlecruiser 3s that I'm going to end up using a lot of. So bear that in mind, just because like you very rarely have the ability to output more than a few battlecruiser 2s. I often don't even design them. I just focus on light ships in the early game because those are more useful later on, compared to these battlecruiser 3s that are going to be obsolete by these battlecruiser 2s that are going to be kind of obsolete by the time they get deployed, especially at this one in 1941. So last, let's look at carriers. Carriers are a little different in that the thing they do is different from what most other ships do. First, we'll pick a designer. The only one that's available is Task Force ship designers. I can't get any extra airplane space off of this, but we'll do that way. We'll go for Carrier Engine 2. This is the same. Over here, we get cruiser armor for carriers. It's the same as for cruisers. Secondary batteries, I'm going to do a dual-purpose one, because this is to defend the carrier against air stuff. I'm going to put anti-air in here, and then I got 2 slots for deck space. Interesting. I can use the baseline airplane catapult for these to increase surface detection and sub-detection, but I'm not. I'm going to put a hangar deck in there. This is going to reduce the speed, but increase deck size by 20. And deck size is the thing you need in order to make the carrier carry airplanes. I've got 4 slots that I can use for deck space. I can also put AA in them. Why would you do that? You know what's great for shooting down enemy aircraft? Fighter aircraft of your own. The one exception is you can throw deck armor in one of these slots. It's going to reduce the speed. That's going to provide 5 extra armor and 15 extra hit points. And that's a bonus that I think is worth it. You're going to get 20 deck space out of each of these open hangar decks. And then once you've done that, every time it deploys, it'll deploy with a suite of aircraft that you'll use to attack enemy ships in any battle that the aircraft carrier is involved in. You can only have 4 carriers in each battle, so more aircraft per carrier is more important than having more carriers. So keep that in mind when you're designing aircraft carriers. There was, in the aircraft designer, an option to design carrier compatible aircraft, and those are what you're going to use to staff these aircraft carriers with aircraft. So that's the ship designer. I hope I've provided you with a good sense of what you can do with what and what kind of options you have in terms of building yourself some ships. I've had fun. I hope you all have had fun, and I will see you all on the other side.